the US has blocked all efforts and initiatives geared towards ending the bloodshed on occupied territory. What's shocking is just how wily American diplomacy is. Dramatic time, not just from the viewpoint of geopolitics, but from the viewpoint of the morality of humanity, which compels us to take urgent measures to ensure a ceasefire and to end the suffering of people in Palestine. What's equally needed is steps towards avoiding a further destabilization of the situation in other parts of the Middle East. To date, the Council has not managed to mount an appropriate response to this truly fateful challenge, and we know the reason. It's the position of the US. The US has blocked all efforts and initiatives geared towards ending the bloodshed on occupied territory. What's shocking is just how wily American diplomacy is. It oscillates between vetoing resolutions about the ceasefire and calling, at the same time, calling for a reduction in the intensity of hostilities in Gaza. Without a doubt, this serves as carte blanche for the ongoing collective punishment of Palestinians. The day before this meeting, we made yet another attempt to achieve a response that stands in solidarity, a response on the part of the Council. We suggested adopting a presidential statement demanding an immediate humanitarian ceasefire, and yet the US and their allies blocked this document as well, thereby confirming that saving the lives of Palestinian civilians is not among their priorities. The humanitarian consequences of this policy are truly horrific. Almost 30,000 civilians have perished, including a large number of women and children. Northern Gaza has been practically entirely destroyed. It's practically uninhabitable. 80% of people in the Gaza Strip are IDPs. It's a true humanitarian tragedy, and there's no end in sight. There are shortages of all basic essentials on an abhorrent scale. I'd also like to draw your attention to a Jerusalem Post article dated 5th January 2024. It was penned by a professor from Ben-Gurion University, Ms. Meksan. She previously worked as a coordinator at the WHO, focusing on emergencies. The article draws on assessments from environmental experts, including Israeli experts. And according to these assessments, there are doubts that Gaza will be inhabitable one day after the conflict ends as a result of the bombardments, the soil, the subsoil, coastal waters, the air. All of them have been polluted on an unprecedented scale by the bombardments, by the chemicals that have been released, by the biomass, which is now rotting, as awful as that sounds, as well as other waste and sewage. There are no more natural, non-artificial water sources. Practically all of the sanitation infrastructure is gone. Roughly 20% of agricultural lands in Gaza will never be restored. We've seen tens of thousands of cases of diarrhea, acute respiratory illnesses, skin diseases, and other diseases as well. We've seen an uptick in the risk of an epidemic. No humanitarian access. The lack of humanitarian access has been recognized by the WHO as the main obstacle to the delivery of humanitarian assistance. Specifically, the WHO has had to call off 6 of its planned humanitarian missions in the north of the Gaza Strip, starting from the end of December, because its requests were denied. Requests for access were denied. In order to alleviate the suffering of the people in the Gaza Strip, Russia, like other states, sent hundreds of tons of foodstuffs, medical equipment, and medicines to the Strip. We support the efforts of UN humanitarian agencies on the ground, and it's very unfortunate that they have also fallen victim to the war. Roughly 150 people have died. This is what the SG just told us about, and he said it's unprecedented in the history of the UN's participation in operations in conflict zones. We're particularly disquieted by the promotion of despicable ideas such as the forcible displacement of all Palestinians from their homes. Such a scenario is unacceptable. It should not be allowed to come to pass under any circumstances. What's also necessary is to put an end to the violence being waged by the Israeli army and Jewish settlers in the West Bank. We must also thwart any attempts to undermine status quo of holy sites in Jerusalem. The Council's inability to take exhaustive measures means that the current escalation of the conflict in Palestine has metastasized across the region. Again, not without the nefarious participation of the US and their allies. Their military presence in the Middle East, just like in other parts of Eurasia, is creating new unacceptable risks to international security. We categorically repudiate the wholly unjustified aggression against Yemen, an aggression waged by the US and the UK without Council approval. Their actions are a direct threat to international peace. They're undermining a world order that's based not on the Anglo-Saxons' rules, but on international law, with the UN playing a central role. We also condemn Israel's strikes on Syria. In particular, strikes, the stated targets of which are bodies that are legally operating in Syria. In fact, they were invited by the government. Political assassinations must end. The situation on the Israeli-Lebanese border is also particularly dangerous. This only serves to exacerbate the very difficult situation in the region. It's already dire, and it didn't begin yesterday. It began many, many years ago. What we're referring to are repeated invasions by the US and their satellites in independent states, which resulted in hundreds of thousands of lives lost in Iraq, the destruction of Libyan statehood, the war in Syria, massive refugee flows, and an unprecedented rise in international terrorism. The Russian Federation will not accept terrorism in any shape or form. We categorically condemned attacks on civilians in Israel, which occurred on the 7th of October 2023. In contrast to our Western colleagues who practice double standards, we don't divide extremists into good guys and bad guys, into us and them. We insist on everyone currently detained in Gaza to be freed, irrespective of their nationality and their origin.
Stay with the Times of India for news breaks, analysis, interviews and events. We bring you stories from your neighborhood and from across the globe as well. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Hit the like button and press the bell icon so you don't miss any of our videos.